Hello, my name is Sam Feltham. I'm the Director of the Public Health Collaboration and welcome to the PHC Virtual Conference 2020. The coronavirus has changed all of our lives, but where there's an obstacle, there's also an opportunity. And that opportunity comes in the guise of this virtual conference. Earlier this year, we had to postpone our two main events, the annual conference and the Real Food Rocks Festival, until next year. These events allow us to connect, learn and grow, but they also help us raise crucial funds for the PHC to continue. With that in mind, and before we let the next presenter speak, this virtual conference is 100% free for all. But if you find the content valuable today, then please consider donating £2 or whatever you can afford through the Total Giving website via www.phcuk.org/donate. Or if you're in the UK, you can simply text PHC to 70660 to donate £2 directly from your phone. We hope you enjoy the conference from wherever you are in the world, and be sure to get involved in the civil conversation on the comment section here on YouTube or via the hashtag PHCVCon2020 on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Thanks for your support, take care and stay safe.
Okay, thank you very much. Welcome to my short presentation. My name is Dr. Shan Hussain. I want to start by thanking Sam Feltham for organising the PHC virtual conference this year and for inviting me to speak. I was very privileged to attend last year in London at the PHC event at the Royal College of General Practitioners, and it was a terrific event. There were some wonderful speakers. Many of them talked about the incredible importance of dietary changes that we need to make to support our overall health and well-being. And to be honest, I don't really have much to add to what was already said in those conversations. So I'm not going to be talking about dietary choices today. And I also am not going to be talking about COVID-19. I think I've been doing a lot of that over the last few months. And I'm sure that many of our presenters this weekend have been talking about it too. So let's try and steer clear of that and focus on what I want to discuss today, which is the silent killer in our lives. So before we get into that, I just want to give you a brief introduction as to who I am and what I do. My name is Dr. Shan Hussain. I'm a general practitioner for the National Health Service. I'm also an author and a podcaster, and I've got a special interest in health promotion and disease prevention. So here we are, it's May 2020, and we certainly find ourselves in some interesting and challenging times, shall we say, to put it mildly. But we're also very fortunate, very blessed at this time to have so many advances in science and technology and medicine. We've got some extremely qualified scientists working around the clock right now to find some sort of treatment, vaccination against COVID-19 to help restore some sort of normality in our lives. And I think that we are very, very fortunate, but we've also got to remember that we do actually already have more medications than at any time in our history. Yet despite that, something interesting is also happening. If we look at our mortality rates across the country, life expectancy is actually falling in some parts of the UK and certainly stalling across the country. And so if we really explore that, one thing that we could postulate is that we can't actually medicate our way out of many of the lifestyle illnesses that we're currently experiencing right now. And this is the area that I want to get into today and talk about at greater length. So before we do that though, let's get into my story so that I can help you understand where I'm coming from and what's really brought me to get such a fascination in this area. So I graduated from Imperial College in London back in 1999, and I spent my first 7 years in hospital medicine, working across various different specialties, including 3 years in A&E, or ED as it's known nowadays, and absolutely loved it. I really loved the fact that we could see and treat literally anything that came through the door. We were really at the coalface, and we had to have such a broad range of knowledge and experience to help to manage such conditions. I did decide after a while that perhaps the hours and the shift patterns weren't really for me, so I went into general practice and became a GP partner in 2007 in my hometown of Nottinghamshire. Now, it was very interesting going into general practice as a partner because a lot of things changed. We weren't just working as clinical doctors. We were also essentially working as directors of a small business, which brought a number of challenges alongside it. And as the years went by, I noticed three patterns, three very interesting trends that I thought if we don't address these, we could be in a lot of trouble. The first one was greater demand, both at a clinical level and also at an admin level. And the second one was a reduction in income, despite what you were reading in the newspapers. We weren't earning as much as we were year on year. And with rising inflation, these three trends unfortunately led to the fact that we were actually working harder for less income, which ultimately had less value. And I thought, wow, if we extrapolate this, we as a profession are going to be in a lot of trouble very soon. So I took it upon myself to learn as much as I could about these areas, starting from an admin point of view and really understanding how a general practice actually works. And I have to say that was extremely stressful, very challenging, and a lot of pressure knowing that if we got it wrong, then we could be in an awful lot of trouble, as could our staff and our patients. So I spent a lot of time learning from our managers and our accountants, but also realizing the limitations that they had. So I took it upon myself to learn about finance, accounting, cash flow, taxation, procurement, tendering, team building, pretty much everything that you need to know to effectively manage such an organization and ensure that year on year we can actually sustain as a business. And unfortunately, that brought a lot of stress with it, but it worked. It was effective, and we were very fortunate to come out of it much stronger. And it was great to see the outcomes that we had. But at the same time, what fascinated me even more than that was the clinical demands that were being made. Back in the 90s, people would see their doctor on average twice a year, but now they were seeing their doctor on average 7 times every year. And I thought, why is this happening? Why are we having to undertake more consultations? And not just that, but patients' expectations seem to be rising. They seem to want more from us. They want us to do more for them to help them. And I thought, well, what can we do about this? How can we manage this and get a better understanding as to what is driving this and how to meet this kind of demand? And these were the 3 questions that I really wanted to get answered. Why were people getting sicker? Why was our chronic disease register rising? Why were we was it down to just case finding, or were people actually genuinely starting to develop these conditions at a higher rate than what we were used to? And also, how many of these illnesses were preventable? And how many of our patients actually knew about these preventative strategies that they could effectively undertake that were scientifically proven and could help to prevent or avoid, treat, and in some cases even reverse certain illnesses? And this came to a head back in 2011. I remember the day really well, and I wrote about it in the first chapter of my book. It was probably the busiest Monday morning of my life. I'd seen almost 50 patients that morning. And as you may well know, patients tend to present with an average of 2.7 problems to their GP per consultation. So it was a very, very demanding morning. And I remember by lunchtime, I just felt physically and emotionally exhausted. I felt like I'd had nothing left in the tank. And I didn't really feel I could even continue with my day. And I just wondered, how many of these cases actually genuinely need to see me today? And if they knew some of the things that we knew and they implemented those into their lifestyles, could they have actually prevented their illness? And I scanned through the list of the patients that I'd seen that morning, and it came to around about 80%. 80% of patients could have avoided seeing GP that morning. And that would have had just a massive effect on reducing the stress that we were experiencing as an organization, not just myself, but our entire team, but also improving the health across our community. So I took a bit of time out and I started to look into this at a deeper level. And I thought, well, let's start nice and simple and basic and ask ourselves this question: what is health? How do we define health? And what does health actually mean to us? So if we look at the recognized definition that we have at the moment, it's by the World Health Organization back in 1948. They said that health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. And I remember the first time I heard that definition, I thought, gosh, I don't have that kind of health. I don't actually know anyone that does. But it's not really about having that complete physical, mental, and social well-being. I realized that it's more about moving towards it, making sure that we're heading in the right direction through the day-to-day choices that we're making. And when I looked at this and explored it further, these were the 3 words that jumped out at me. And I thought, well, if we think about many of the chronic diseases that we have, many of the lifestyle conditions that we treat day to day, a lot of them arise from an imbalance in one or more of these areas. And if we actually address those, we can actually start to treat without medication a lot of these conditions. And in certain cases, as we're increasingly seeing, we can reverse them. So keeping in mind that definition, and also looking at the fact that if an illness is not genetic, it's got to be down to environment. How can we actually engineer this, and how can we support people's health better? Doctors have pretty much exclusively over the last few centuries talked about physical health and the importance of physical health. And that really comes back to simple factors such as dietary measures, hydration, good clean air, activity, rest, healthy sleep. Mental health really comes back to how we organize our thoughts, our emotions, process the meaning that we attach to them. And social well-being comes back to how and who we interact with in our environment. What are we consuming on a day-to-day level, not just from the people we meet, but from everything that we interact with, and how does that show up in our health? And we do know as a fact that lifestyle elements, there are lifestyle elements to many chronic diseases, and this list is certainly not exhaustive, but we don't need to look very far to find very clear evidence of the fact that lifestyle can contribute to hypertension, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and even certain cancers. But if we look at how we are addressing these from these three parameters, physical health, mental health, and social health, we can actually reduce the risk of developing these conditions, and in some cases even reverse these conditions or place them into remission. So I became fascinated by this. I went headfirst all the way into this and started doing everything I could to really spread the information that I had. I wrote a book, started a podcast. I had a lot of inquiries from different parts of the media, TV, radio, magazines, newspapers. And I loved what I was doing. And I just kept on doing it because I thought, I've got to get this information out there, and we've got to really help our country and understand and really appreciate the importance of lifestyle factors. So I was working probably 6-7 days a week, and thought I was loving it. But until one morning, it was a Friday morning, very typical average Friday morning. I just got back from the gym, and I started to get this strange chest pain right in the middle of my chest, slightly to the left. And I thought, gosh, I don't like this. What's going on? So I took a shower, started to get ready for work, and this pain would not go away. It was absolutely crippling. It almost brought me down to my knees. And unfortunately, my wife and son were away at the time. They were on a surfing holiday with my son's school friends. And so I actually ended up calling an ambulance for myself. That's how bad the pain was. And the ambulance crew arrived, put the ECG on, and they said, sorry to tell you this, but you're having a heart attack. And I said, no, it can't be true. Give me that. Let me have a look. And there it was. This is the actual ECG they took. And you can see in these leads here, inferior leads 2, 3, and AVF, we have ST elevation and some reciprocal ST depression in the anterior leads. Very clear textbook ECG changes of a myocardial infarction. So they rushed me to hospital. I got to the coronary unit, and the cardiologist on call was fortunately a friend of mine, a friend of the family's, and he said, "Yep, this is fine. We'll take care of this straight away." Very businesslike, and they removed a large clot and inserted 2 stents into my right coronary artery. Sent me to the ward, where I just lay there in a bed, reflecting on my life, really. Now, I want to be clear, I haven't lived the purest of lives. Certainly in the late 90s, early noughties, I was quite a regular on certain social scenes. But otherwise, I'm very fit and well, healthy, active, no history of hypertension, not diabetic, no metabolic syndrome, and eat well, exercise pretty much daily, and generally take care of myself. And what really distressed me more than anything at this time is why. Why did this happen to me? I take care of me, I look after me, and I actually help people to take care of themselves. Why has this happened to me? And is this something that I can do something about here? And shortly after I was back onto the ward, the nurse came in to check on me. And we just got talking. She asked me what I did for a living. I told her. She said, "I'm not even slightly surprised." She just rolled her eyes and said, "Gosh, we admit so many doctors here, you wouldn't believe it." And I said, really? How can that be the case? Why is that happening? Cardiologist came round, and again, I asked him this question: why has this happened to me? And what can I do about it? And he said, no, so two things: bad genes and bad luck. And we do have a family history of heart disease. I don't really have a history of bad luck, but what frustrated me about that was there's nothing I can do about that. I'm a very proactive person. I like to, solve problems. But these are two factors that I can't adjust. And it was very difficult to live with hearing this. And I will admit that I did struggle a lot. I stopped working for a couple of months. I stopped podcasting. I didn't engage in any other work. I was just reflecting on why this has happened. And as word got round, I was contacted by my friend, your friend, everyone's friend, Dr. Hussain. And he said, mate, I've just heard what's happened. We need to talk. And I said, yeah, I think we do. And we got on a Skype chat, and we had a really long conversation, and it was terrific. It was extremely kind of him to give up his time to talk to me about this. And here's a question that he asked me that really stayed with me, and that was, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your average stress levels during the last 5 years? And I really thought about that very carefully, and I came up with 7 to 8. And that's when it really hit me that stress is such an important factor in these conditions, and how much stress can actually creep upon us without us realizing it. And I really would urge you to ask yourself this question of yourselves. How, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your average stress levels over the last 5 years? And what can we do about it? So I started actively looking at stress and the effects that stress can have on our overall health and well-being, and how we can de-stress on a regular basis, on a daily basis, and what that can do for our overall health and our well-being. There was a BMA survey done the same year, and brought up some very worrying statistics, many of them related to stress factors. 40% of newly qualified GPs leave the NHS after 5 years. 20% of NHS doctors experience mental health conditions, and 90% of them said it was down to their work environment. 1 in 3 doctors, NHS doctors, resort to alcohol, drugs, or self-prescribing just as a way of getting through their shifts, which is just terrifying. And this final statistic is actually from a separate survey that's published in Pulse magazine. Suicide rates amongst GPs working in the NHS are up to 4 times the national average. And this became something that I was extremely worried about, and I think we all should be, that the stress factors that we experience on a day-to-day basis, not just in the health profession, but across the country, really need to be looked at to explore how these are affecting our health. Because a little bit of stress now and again is okay. In fact, it can be life-saving. If we are walking down the street and a big saber-toothed tiger came in front of us, we would need to have that flight response just to protect ourselves and escape and look after our own safety. But it's that long-term stress that concerns me. That's sort of what we deem as low-level underlying background stress that's just kind of creeping up on us over a long-term basis, and what that does to us. I'm not going to go into all of these stress hormones and cortisol and adrenaline and inflammatory mediators, but the effects of these can have pretty devastating consequences on our overall health. Stress has been shown to cause or exacerbate many serious health problems. And again, this list is not exhaustive, but cardiovascular disease, including ischemic heart disease and hypertension, obesity. Stress can certainly drive some very unhealthy eating habits. I'm sure I will certainly raise my hand that over this last lockdown period, my dietary choices have not always been the healthiest. But also it can do the opposite. It can actually take away our appetite, and it can lead to all kinds of problems relating to weight issues. Menstrual problems, sexual dysfunctions, skin and hair conditions, gastrointestinal conditions, including ulcerative colitis, irritable bowel syndrome, mental health conditions, certainly anxiety and depression, they can all be exacerbated by long-term effects of stress. And also a lowered immune response. There was actually a study that I partook in when I was a medical student at Charing Cross Hospital, where they checked our levels of certain immunological markers, and they did it around about exam time to show that the immune system was being depressed under times of stress. So Stress is obviously an external event that can be perceived in different ways. You know, what's stressful for one person might not be stressful for another, but it's more about how we can manage these stress effects and what they do to our health and what we can do to mitigate the effects. So I'm going to list 12 different scientifically proven ways that we can manage stress effectively, and hopefully start to incorporate some of them, particularly through the challenging times that we're all going through at the moment. The first one is the one that pretty much every doctor that you ever meet will talk about, and that is the importance of exercise, the benefits of exercise. And it has been shown in countless studies that moderate aerobic exercise, something as simple as brisk walking or light running 4 times a week, and only for 20 minutes, half an hour if that, it can not only help to reduce the effects of stress, but also help to boost your mood, improve your sleep, increase focus, and can also prevent a lot of mental health conditions, including depression. Yoga, regular practice of yoga. This is an interesting one. There was a study done in India back in 2015 that showed yoga actually adds years to your life. It can improve your longevity and help you live longer. And it's interesting that the yoga teachers I meet, strangely enough, they pretty much all of them look younger than they actually are. So it is certainly very interesting, and there's a lot of research that has been shown that yoga is effective, a way to reduce stress. There was a paper published by De Boer et al. In San Francisco, showed that yoga has been linked to not only self-reported stress, but reduction in the levels of cortisol. Mindfulness and meditation. Now, this is an area that, particularly meditation, is one that I'm very keen on promoting, and in fact, writing a book about it as we speak. There's so much research, so much evidence about this. A simple one in California, San Francisco, that found meditation boosts dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins, and also helps to reduce levels of adrenaline and cortisol within our bodies. And there was a study done in my town, actually, in Nottingham, that I'm unable to find, but I do know it exists because I was invited to comment on it and for BBC Radio Nottingham, where they took school children between the ages of 11 and 13, and they taught them how to practice mindful breathing for 30 minutes a day, and they actually incorporated it into the daily curriculum. And after 9 weeks, they found that stress levels, self-reported stress levels, were reduced by 90%, and concentration levels were increased by 80%. And that on its own is fascinating. I think it's something that needs to have more attention. It's something that we are now increasingly seeing in the corporate sector. Large companies like Google and Target are actually offering courses to help employees manage stress through mindfulness and meditative activities. Massage. This is an interesting one because there was a study in Iran of ICU workers back in 2013, a randomized clinical trial where they took staff, and it was, I believe they offered 25 minutes twice weekly Swedish massages for 4 weeks, and they found that there was a highly significant reduction in stress levels with a p-value of less than 0.001. So that is pretty significant and certainly worth considering. Let's look at some more. Now, the Japanese call this forest bathing, but getting out into nature has been shown to reduce stress levels and boost our immunity, and also help us to live longer. Believe it or not, it can actually boost our energy levels. Just getting out for a regular walk, 20 minutes a day, out in the countryside, or somewhere that is green around your area. Hopefully there is something. Can have a dramatic effect on reducing stress. And one of the things I've really enjoyed during this lockdown period is actually going for regular walks with my family and seeing other families together walking around our village, and really sort of getting out into nature. And people seem to find that their moods are elevated. Everyone seems to be pleasant and polite and smiling and happily greeting you. And I do hope that that does continue post-lockdown. People do actually continue to get out in nature on a regular basis. Now, this is an interesting one, helping other people. There was a research paper from Yale University. It was Raposa et al. In 2015, published in Clinical Psychological Science, that showed that actively doing things to help other people on a daily basis, even small acts, just like helping to open a door as someone's walking by, can help people cope with everyday stresses and difficult times that they experience. And it was a linear correlation that the number of helpful acts they did actually correlated with higher levels of daily positive emotions and overall better mental health. So certainly worth considering there. Now, taking a nap on a daily basis, who doesn't feel better after taking a short nap? And this was published studied in 2015 in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism, and showed that regular daily naps, no more than 20 minutes a day, was shown to reduce levels of interleukin-6 and norepinephrine in the saliva, and was found that it was beneficial as a result of helping to reduce self-reported stress levels. So another thing to perhaps consider there. Taking deep breaths. Now, this is something that I'm actually quite a big fan of. Many of us don't actually really take deep diaphragmatic breaths to really oxygenate full parts of our lungs on a regular basis, and really understanding how we breathe and using the diaphragm, and as a result of that, the abdomen comes forward. We can actually increase our lung capacity by up to 30% if we start to breathe correctly. If you take 10 of those deep breaths, you can actually feel an awful lot better very quickly and help to reduce stress. And if you think about it, we meet people who are getting very agitated or upset or distressed. One of the first things we say to them is breathe. Just take some deep breaths and just relax, and that can make a huge difference. And there's been a lot of studies confirming that. Stromberg et al. In 2015 showed that it can help to reduce anxiety and depression. And there was a study by Salyers et al. In 2011 showing that a one-day breathing exercise was found to relieve emotional exhaustion and depersonalization as a result of job burnout. So something also to perhaps consider. Laughter is a very powerful stress reliever. I'm not just talking about the occasional chuckle, but a proper sort of gut-wrenching, side-splitting belly laugh can have very powerful effects on our overall health and our well-being, and help to reduce our stress levels. Personally, I'm a huge fan of watching stand-up comedy, and I've certainly been doing a lot of that just to help through these difficult times during lockdown. There are some great resources out there, and we've got some more media at our fingertips perhaps than any time in our history. So do look into how we can perhaps start to engage in more laughter. I think it's perhaps something that's much needed right now. Listening to music is one of my go-to treatments for when I'm feeling very stressed. There were been studies that looked into that, and they actually found that listening to light jazz or classical music is thought to be the most calming of all music. Not really for me, but that's fine. But it was looked into. There was a study, I've got it right here, just give me 1 second. It was Linnemann et al. In 2015. It was a German study that found that people who listen to regular relaxing music on a daily basis would report reduced subjective stress levels. And it was statistically significant. P level was less than 0.01. So, and again, something else to consider. Creative arts. Now, there's a fantastic doctor based in London, a consultant psychiatrist called Dr. Ramya Mohan, who I'd highly recommend following. She's created some work around creative arts for processing emotions, and has been shown to help with various different types of mental health problems related to stress. So whether it's painting or playing a musical instrument, dance, some sort of art therapy, can have some really powerful effects on how we manage the effects of stress on our physical health. And the final one I'm going to share is hopefully an obvious one that we've managed to do during this time, and that is spending time with friends and family. We don't need to talk about social distancing as much as we should be talking about physical distancing. We can still be social, we can still connect virtually with people, and hopefully we've managed to spend some time to do that during these lockdown times. And again, it has been scientifically proven. There was a study that found that particularly for women, it was found that spending time with friends and with children helps release oxytocin levels, and it was found that There was another study found that both men and women with the fewest social connections were actually more likely to suffer from depression and anxiety. But what do all these things have in common? All these 12 things, they have one simple thing in common, and that is pretty much any healthy activity that helps us feel centered, present, grounded, and at peace can really have some pretty powerful effects on how we respond to stress. And here's the question I often ask of patients: what healthy activities do you love doing that when you practice them, you lose track of time? You find yourself completely immersed in them and you just absolutely enjoy and love doing them. There was a patient I remember seeing back in 2014 who I remember him very well. He came in very anxious, distressed, agitated, pacing up and down the room and describing all kinds of problems he was experiencing through work and at home. And it took me probably about 15 minutes just to calm him down, sit down and talk to me. And he was very clear from the offset that I don't want any medication. I don't want you to refer me to any counselor or therapist or psychiatrist. I just want some help, doctor. And so I asked him this exact question: what do you love doing that when you do it, you just lose all track of time? And interestingly, he said fishing, which was very peculiar to me. It's not the sort of thing that I would think of, but that's what his thing was. And so I said, okay, when did you last go fishing? And he said, gosh, probably 10 years ago. So we had a long conversation, and we agreed at the end of it that I'd sign him off work for a week, and he would agree to go fishing for 1 hour every day and come back and see me in 7 days' time. And when he came back, he looked like a different person completely. The stress was just gone from his face. He was smiling. He was relaxed. His speech was slower and more gentle. You could tell that his physical body was more relaxed, and he was calm. And more importantly, he was ready. He was ready to go back to work. He was ready to face the problems that he was describing. And that's how powerful these little activities can have on our overall health and our well-being. And so I would urge you to come up with 10 different things that meet these criteria and create a little menu of these things that you could practice, and just pick one to do every single day for at least 20 minutes a day, and see how you feel. See how that affects your overall health and your overall well-being, and let me know how you get on. I would love to hear from you. Do feel free to stay in touch, and I always like to hear how people are doing and see if these sort of activities can have a positive effect on their health and well-being. So I want to thank you very much for allowing me to speak to you all. I do hope you've enjoyed this and found some sort of value. If you want to follow the work I do have a podcast called Enduring Health, which has been running for about 18 months now. It's been doing very well. It did hit #1 in health when we launched. And we've had some terrific guests over the years: Dr. Hussain Malhotra, David Unwin, Zoe Harcombe, Sam Feltham joined us, and who else have we had? Sean Baker, Nina Teitschel. Some really, really valuable insights that they've shared with us. I have written a book called The Big Prescription, and you can also follow me through Twitter or Facebook. If you want to stay in touch, feel free to reach out. I'd absolutely love to hear from you. Okay, thank you very much, and I wish you all a good day, and look forward to the rest of the presentations. Thank you.